everyone is a little stressed about where the economy is going, what's going to happen with my work, AI taking over, and all of these things. So that is a general stressor over here. People think that psychology is all about meditation and journaling. It's a lot more than that. Even if we talk about meditation and journaling, there are different types and forms of it.
Is there any one habit, people, those who are watching, can start from tomorrow, which can drastically help them towards a healthy mental life? Any one simple change?
Brains are not designed to multitask. Our brains also need rest, apart from sleep, of course. So, if it is possible, just take 2 minutes in a day. Literally sit with a timer. Do not let it be 2 minutes, 1 second as well. Literal 2 minutes, sit with a timer and literally just lie down, sit, or anything. Just don't do anything in those 2 minutes. You'll see how difficult it is.
Hello, Dr. Radhika. Thank you so much for joining in today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. So my first question is about the name. It says healthy nudge. Very interesting. So what do you really want to communicate through this name?
Okay, so funny story behind how I came up with the name actually. So I was with my friends and they were like, I wish there was someone to, just push me, okay, just do something nice. Someone, and because she said that she was too scared to take the first step, she did not know how to initiate. So initiation was a problem. She's like, I just hope someone just comes in and, they're just like, do it, just kind of push me in that. And I was like, okay, I'll give you that push. I'll give you that healthy push. So ultimately, it got me thinking about, okay, there are lots of people who actually need that push, and push is not a very flouncy term. So I
Mm-hmm.
replace with nudge. And also in those similar years, there's this what do you say, there's an economist, he's an American economist, Richard Thaler, who came with the nudge theory that people need certain nudges in their life, certain behavioral alterations, certain behavioral what do you say, push basically, to help them to or just go for the things that they need, which was similar to what I was doing for my friend over there and the discussion that we had. And ultimately coming up with the name Healthy Nudge. So what we aim is to provide the people who come to us a healthy push, a healthy direction that we show to them. Specifically in terms of mental health, to help them at least get started with the process. And of course, we help them in sustaining the process and making sure that they're on the right track throughout it. So that's the story.
Wow, wow. So what is it? Is it like a offline center you run, or do you have online services and packages? Like how does it work?
All right, so we do both online and offline services. So we are a team of psychologists. So I'm the founder and the chief psychologist, and I've got a few more psychologists with me. So there are child therapists, there are clinical psychologists, there are counseling psychologists, and we together run the organization. So not a very big organization, to be honest, since it's a startup and it's a female-led organization. So all the therapists on the team are currently females. And
Oh.
so that's how we do. We practice both online and offline. We are based in Delhi, and we have got clients from literally all over the world. And whoever is comfortable with online, we do online. Some people are comfortable with chat as well. Some people are comfortable with on-call therapy sessions. So it's about whatever works best for the client. We are ready to provide mental health services in all forms and orders.
Wow, sounds really, really good. So, the next question I have in my mind is that, what do you think about the current generation? Do you think they are mentally unhealthy, or they are just more aware and vocal? Like, what is the actual problem right now?
Okay. Okay. In this economy, I don't think a lot of people are generally mentally, feeling safe. So I think this is not a generation thing. First, this is like, I think everyone is a little stressed about where the economy is going, what's going to happen, with my work, AI taking over, and all of these things. So that is a general stressor over here. If we talk about the population, like the current generation, Gen Z, which is the adult population, the young adults these days, there is a lot of information, correct, but there's a lot of misinformation as well. And I think it just outweighs the actual information, the true information that is there on the internet. So there's more false information as compared to the genuine ones. And there are lots of people claiming to be life coaches, and just without any degree,
Mm-hmm.
as they're just giving out gyan basically over social media, and they have made it very tempting and
Mm-hmm.
more audience to them as well. So I think what today's generation's concern, or the problem is, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's a lot of confusion in their heads regarding a lot of things in terms of their personal selves. There's family, there's future, there is college, there is admissions, there are exam papers leaking and all of that happening these days. So they just fall for whatever seems easy for them, and ultimately they feel misinformed, they get misdiagnosed by their friends, by themselves, ultimately tagging themselves with things like, oh, I'm such a pessimistic person, you are such a narcissistic person. It's not that I feel so depressed, and again, things like that, they just tag them with clinical terms. So I think people need to get their information from a very genuine source. They need to, not fall for all of these aesthetic gimmicks that these people are putting out. They should generally look at the credentials of the psychologist or, whoever healer and life coach that they are referring to, and see if it is something that actually applies to them or not. And of course, if they have any concerns, they are free to reach out to us or any other mental health, practitioner, legit mental health practitioner for that reason. So yeah, I think the major concern with this generation is a lot of misinformation. And
So you mentioned about internet gyan, a couple of times. What do you think is the biggest myth on internet around mental health?
Okay, so I've been coming across a few reels, even by certain celebrities, that psychologists do anything. All they'll tell you is to meditate, to write down your thoughts, to journal. And I think they have a false idea for it. A lot of times therapy is also about finding the right therapist for yourself, who clicks with you, who understands you, with whom you have a good rapport. The therapist style should match, what the client needs, what the patient needs. So at times it takes maybe like, a couple of hits and misses to find the right fit for yourself. Maybe these people did not follow through, maybe they were not in the right space at that time, maybe they did not get the proper connection, maybe they did not follow up with their sessions, or whatever it would have been. People think that psychology is all about meditation and journaling. It's a lot more than that. Even if we talk about meditation and journaling, there are different types and forms of it. We decide based upon our patients' capacities, concerns, problems, issues, stressors, concentration, focus, headspace. What is the thing that would work best for them? So people have a lot of misconceptions about the field of psychology, and lots of, okay, if you have noticed these gurus and these life coaches and healers, their videos over Instagram, Facebook, social media, just they give a lot of generic advice. Oh, do not overthink about it. Think about something else. I mean, this is something that can be applied to literally everyone and anyone around us. And they're like, oh, I do not need to overthink. I need to think about something else. But how not to overthink? How to divert yourself? It's not just about distraction. It's about healthy distraction. It's not just about diversion into anything else. It's about where you are diverting, how you are diverting it to, how sustainable is it, what happens when you crash down and come back to the original, the overthinking loop that you are into. So do not fall for these generic, things. Oh, I understand you have had a bad day, but do these 5 things, connect with nature, go for a walk, pet a dog, meditate, sleep well. But is it actually applicable to everyone? Is it actually, worth everyone's time and energy? So we really
So
need.
they have million views, and everybody is different. So how can the same advice can be applied to millions of people?
So that's my point. So we really need to understand where is it coming from and how is it actually valid for us as an individual. And that is where the role of therapist comes in. We individualize, we tailorize our therapies, our schedules, interventions just for that particular person. So
Got it. Yeah, fair enough. So, my next question is about our channel is more for a working professional people. They tend to say that, I am not depressed, I am just tired. So, how do people differentiate between being burnout and being depressed? Like, is there something they need to know about themselves so that they can figure out that they need help now?
Okay. So, if the stress, burnout, depress, sadness, tension, long working hours, any of it is interrupting with your daily functioning. You don't feel like getting up from the bed. You dread the idea of going to work. It is impacting your health, and in terms of you do not have time to go for a simple 10 minutes walk, nothing too fancy. Just go to the park, just take a stroll. Not Don't even jog, just the simple stroll. It's you're always thinking about it. It's interrupting your sleep patterns, it's interrupting your relationship with your family, and just basic daily functioning. You don't feel like eating, then yes, you need a psychologist in that case. So this is not just a case of general stressor at that time. In that time it becomes maybe a case of depression, maybe a case of burnout. Depends from person to person and the intensity for it. Burnout is something which happens by repetitive exposure to the certain stressor daily and on a daily basis, basically. And ultimately, we dread the thought of work. But if we are out of work, then we are perfectly fine. If we are partying with our friends, if we are, out with family, if we are indulged in a hobby, we are completely over there. We feel happy over there. But just the idea of going to the office dreads you, and it's just, like sort of sucks the life out of you, then you have reached that state of burnout. And of course, it's impacting your life in general as well. In case of depression, if it is something that has lasted for more than 2.5 months, these symptoms, and of course, a lot more than this as well. For example, social isolation. People do not feel like mingling with other people. They feel like my social battery is completely dead. I don't want to go mingle with anyone or any person, even their pets at times. So in that case, we diagnose them with depression. Again, there are different levels to it, depends from individual to individual. Otherwise, yeah, we can say 2.5 months is usually the duration we take to
So
identify.
to summarize, what I understood is if you feel only stress when you are maybe in office or maybe with some certain colleague, boss or whatever, then it might not be a severe issue. But you said that if it is a repetitive, it is constantly in your mind and going on 24/7 for a couple of months, which is actually affecting your daily function, that means is the sign that you really need help of psychology.
Even with burnouts, I mean, we do not want to reach that stage. It's not.
Mhm.
So it's a slippery slope after that till it, converts.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
as you see any of such, signs, be wary of them
Mhm.
for help, or make some healthy changes as soon as possible.
Is there any one habit, people, those who are watching, can start from tomorrow, which can drastically help them towards a healthy mental life? Any one simple change?
Hmm. Get bored. We have to do all the things all the time. We always need something going on with us. The moment we sit idle, even if it's just for a minute, the mind just starts. There's a lot of mind chatter. There's a lot of, okay, let me scroll reels, let me connect with them, okay, let me just check my emails, let me just empty my, bin, on, let me just start cleaning, let me call someone. We cannot sit idle even for 1 second. Our brains are not designed to multitask. Our brains also need rest, apart from sleep, of course. So, if it is possible, just take 2 minutes in a day. Literally sit with a timer. Do not let it be 2 minutes, 1 second as well. Literal 2 minutes, sit with a timer and literally just lie down, sit, or anything. Just don't do anything in those 2 minutes. You'll see how difficult it is. There will be lots of thoughts in your head as well. But just for those 2 minutes, let's not take any action. Let's not start fidgeting. We are not eating anything. We're not drinking anything. We're just sitting idle. That's it. And
Mhm.
it will give you that space to slow down. If you can eventually increase that duration to, let's say, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and you'll see it does wonders to your brain. You'll get that, where people crave for that slow life. I want a slow morning. I want things to be just smooth as the butter just floating on the toast and things like that. So it will enable them to have that capacity to take things one at a time, to slow down a little, to control the mental chatter a little bit better. So, my advice in simple: start getting bored for at least 2 to 5 minutes a day. That's
Wow, that's very doable.
it. Yeah. It's a
I
challenge.
know this sounds like very small stuff, but if somebody actually does it with consistency, can definitely see, their way towards getting into meditation or hearing their own thoughts or, experiencing the slow life, as you said.
Exactly. So, give it a shot. Let me know how that works out for you as well.
Awesome, awesome. Yes, I will.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, what your experience says while, interacting with people, those who are, I won't say mentally unhealthy, but having some challenges in mental stuff. So, do you think if they're spiritual, if they're really, really spiritual, that, contributes in their good mental health, bad mental health, or any connectivity between these two?
Okay, so spirituality, yes, it plays an important role. As a psychologist, it is very important for us to see signs of hope in the client. For some people, signs of hope can be, I believe God is going to do everything right. I believe my friends, they are always going to be there. I'm hopeful that, it is going to be a struggling time, but I'm going to get out of it, irrespective of the fact they are spiritual or religious or not. So,
Mm.
spirituality does help. But again, we always look out for signs that they're not overindulging in it. Like, they say this balance of everything just creates a chaos. So if it is done in a healthy manner, then yes, it can definitely help out the clients over here. But again, at times spirituality or the spiritual texts are religious texts are misinterpreted, that only God is going to help me out. I don't have to do it. Why is God doing it to me? I did not do anyone's wrong. I did not wrong anyone in my life. What am I being punished for? Is it my karma? Am I bearing fruits for what I did in my past life? People come up with such narratives and thoughts, and ultimately start the self-blame cycle and other negative thoughts over here. So as a psychologist, it becomes my duty to sort of correct that faulty thinking, that cognitive bias that they might be having. And again, it can be a thin line for me as well to walk upon, because I do not want to offend their spirituality or religious beliefs, and at the same time I want to correct or maybe help them have a better translation for those texts over there, which would be helpful for them. Again, not misguiding them, not twisting the words over here, but the actual facts that are there. So spirituality can really help a client if they are practicing it in the right manner. And if they are faulty thinking over there, then definitely we help them out with that.
Fair enough. You're also trained in clinical hypnotherapy. I did my research and find out this. So a lot of people think hypnosis is maybe something dramatic, fake, or something. So what does actually happen in hypnotherapy?
Okay, this is interesting. So I had a client, and I use hypnotherapy for extreme cases of trauma specifically. So I mean, that's my forte when it comes to hypnotherapy. I do not use it to help the clients, remember the past. I mean, that's again past life regression, or people have these ideas. If I go for hypnotherapy, I'll remember my past life. I'll erase my certain, memories, or I'll reframe thoughts. I'll be a new person altogether. I mean, this is not something that I do. I know there are lots of hypnotherapists claiming to be doing that. I don't know how they do it. Don't want to comment upon that or go there. But what happens in hypnotherapy is that we sort of make the consciousness and the subconsciousness, the layer between them, as sort of a semi-permeable layer, where it becomes easier for us to reframe the thought and give our subconscious mind a message, a signal, which we then learn to sort of plant in our head. So that's how it goes. So okay, if someone has gone through extreme traumas, let's say someone was sexually harassed with, she was let's say in class 11th or 12th, and this has created intimacy issues. Now in her later life, she has fear of crowded spaces, she's anxious around certain genders, she doesn't trust people, and again, she's questioning, doubting herself, she's getting lots of flashbacks over there as well. So in such situations, we use hypnotherapy to first of all get the idea into the head that I am safe now. This is literally the first step. I am not defined by the traumas. The traumas do not have control over me. The flashbacks, the memories, the sensations, we desensitize them with the help of hypnotherapy. So that is how I use it for my practice. And I actually had a case of a guy, and we went for hypnotherapy session. Once the session was over, and he was like, I thought लोग तो ऐसे ही रोते हैं hypnotherapy के बाद or during the session. I thought everything was just drama, but once I experienced it myself, I understood that people have real emotions, and how deeply hypnotherapy can impact certain people and certain memories layers, and how we can reform our way of thinking about certain episodes and even about ourselves in that case. So hypnotherapy works. Hypnotherapy does not work for everyone. We need to have a certain kind of personality for that. We need to be a little bit more trusting in the process. Basically, if someone is a bit too rigid, a bit too anti hypnotherapy, oh, what is it going to do, how is it going to work for me, we really need to first clarify all of these doubts and help them gain trust in the process, because till that time you do not trust your therapist, either therapy nor hypnotherapy, it doesn't work. So trust is a very important part in both of the process over here.
So I just have a small query. So once you said that if you want to inject any idea, a concept, let the person is safe, let the person, doesn't matter, you are stronger than what you feel you are afraid of. So one way is, one use case for hypnotherapy is that you inject the idea which you feel is good for the person. Can you also pull out some concepts, like some thoughts through hypnotherapy, or it's only to inject?
We don't pull out per se, we read them. So it's not we can erase memories. We cannot just undo something that has happened, but we can help them frame new perceptions around it, or help them have to more control over their heads, over their minds, over their present life. So that is how we can work with that. We cannot, get it out and throw it in the bin, sort of.
Usually, let's say if I want to start from next week, what should I be prepared for? Is it like too many repeated sessions? Like I have to be mentally prepared that for next few months, few years, few weeks, I don't know, I have to be there, like in terms of my investment, in terms of my time, and overall investment in terms of money. What do you think a person like me should know before getting into this?
First of all, you don't have to prepare about anything in particular. All you need to do is come with an open mind. That is all I want from you. We do not directly jump into a hypnotherapy session. We do like, oh, hello, come in, lie on the couch. It doesn't work like that. Before actually getting into the hypnotherapy session, we first have some generic therapy sessions to understand the concerns, to understand the
No,
person.
my question is not about hypnotherapy. My question is, I feel some mental issues and I want to consult you as a psychologist. Obviously, you are going to decide whether I need hypnotherapy or which therapy. I'm sure there must be many therapies. So, what should I be prepared of? Is it like a, what I felt, after talking to a couple of my friends, those who experience, it's not a one-time thing. There are a lot of repetition. There are a lot of, some people are taking it for years now. Some people just months and all. What one should be prepared for? Like, how long does it usually take?
Hmm. Okay, I have had patients with whom I have had like over hundreds of sessions. I've had
Mm-hmm.
have shown tremendous growth, tremendous results after like 6 to 8 sessions. So it depends upon how much you want to do, like the kind of efforts that you are willing to put in. And it's my job to help you put in effort, to keep you motivated, to give you those research-backed interventions and strategies to keep you, consistent with it. So what I expect from you when you come from therapy is just an open mind and maybe some kind of notes as well as to what you want to discuss. So some people do that. I want to discuss this, because when we are in front of a therapist, at times we go blank. We are like, oh, I don't know a lot of things to discuss, but I don't know where to start from. I don't know what to say. So they just like, slide their phones that, this is what I wanted to discuss, give it a read, and, let me know how you want to go. So, and then I ask the questions and, initiate the conversation with them. So maybe just like a little list of things that what you want to discuss. Again, it doesn't have to be fancy. You don't have to worry about the grammar or the language, maybe even the curse words at times, perfectly fine. This is a free judgmental space for you. And if you cannot be your real self over here, then I don't think there's a better space to be the real version of you anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need a lot from the clients, just an open mind. And somewhere around, like, if we talk about the timeline for it, again, it depends from case to case. It depends from individual to individual. But 8 to 10 sessions is like the average number of sessions that we take. That could be
What's the average time gap between these sessions?
like most of the times it's once a week, once in like
Once a week.
or so. Like that's the usual consistency that we have.
So
Again,
in average cases, 2 to 3 months is enough for somebody to treat their pressing issues, and then rest on their willingness, how long they want to take it, and how good they want to work on themselves, I guess.
you cannot narrow it down for every issue.
Uh-huh.
Might take like an year or so. For maybe
Uh-huh.
depression, take around 3 to 6 months. For something like daily life stressors, sleep issues, lifestyle concerns, lack of motivation, work-life balance, a month and a half works well. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yes, so just an average for an average people those who are viewing this and want to experience it at first time, they
yeah,
just need to keep this in mind. 1.5 months is okay for me to come out of the current issue, and then it's up to my choice kitna lamba I want to work on myself.
yeah, it's also their choice and also the therapist suggestion that these are the
हाँ.
that we would like to work with, and if you're
Hmm.
comfortable with it, if you would like to actually work on these issues, and we can schedule something for these particular concerns specifically. So
Hmm.
that's how it goes.
Hmm. So, when we see that there are people those are really aware about now doing exercise or at least having healthy food, that is the reason we are getting so many brands like good to have and better to have and all that, the no palm oil, no sweetener, no sugar, all those things, right? Do you think people are getting really aware and doing something on the mental health issue only, or we are still towards physical health only?
I would say the weightage is more towards physical health. Definitely, there is a rise in awareness towards mental health and how seriously people are taking their mental health. But still, physical health seems to dominate the field, which is not wrong, but it's just that people need to catch up on their mental health as well. They can go to the gym, eat all organic, use olive oils and no oils, and all of these things, ragi breads and protein breads and whatnot. But till the time their mental health is not really up to the mark, they're not feeling good from inside. there's still gonna be something missing that they would feel like. Then, okay, everything is fine. I'm going to the gym, I'm meeting out with my friends, work is going good. But sometimes it feels like, something is missing in life. Maza nahi aa raha hai life mein, lekin sab theek chal. This maza might be a mental health concern that is unaddressed. So you can do all you want, which is again a great thing because a lot of people are not even, trying as well. So if you're able to be physically fit, have a good social connection, have a good family relation, have good relationship with yourself, good work life, perfect. I mean, that's like the ideal life. But with that, make sure that you're also giving attention to your mental health and doing something to just, calm yourself down, have a slow morning, just things like that around it.
So what comes first, mental health or physical health? Like people say, स्वस्थ दिमाग स्वस्थ शरीर में रहता है, and then sometimes people say no, mind comes first, then the body. What do you think?
Okay, so there was a recent study which showed that the gut health and mental health, they're highly connected. So if there is an issue over here, there's going to be an issue over here. There's an issue over here, there's an issue over here. We cannot say, what comes first. It's like chicken or egg. Like what came first is like a inevitable cycle that's going on. So gut health is very much connected to mental health. If we are stressed, we don't feel like eating. The tummy is all rumbling. There are butterflies in the stomach. If we don't feel good, if someone is something as simple as constipated, happens to everyone, very generic. We feel very stressed throughout the day. We don't feel like working. We don't feel like meeting people. So again, we like, isolating ourselves. We're only focusing on, when it's going to get better, when is my tummy going to get better, things like that. So if this is disturbed, this is disturbed, this is disturbed, this is disturbed. So gut health and mental health connection is very, very strong over here. Yeah.
So sounds fascinating. One has to work on both simultaneously.
I understand it can be a tough journey, but not an impossible one.
But so what does a mentally healthy life look like?
Mentally healthy life looks like you have good relation with yourself. That's the first thing. I feel good about myself. I have good social connections. I have a balanced life. I am allowed and not allowed exactly. I am emotionally available. I do not shy away from expressing my emotions, but at the same time can also manage my emotions well. So along with that, I do not believe in toxic positivity. It's not everything is so beautiful, everything is lovely. If there is something that is not good, it is not good. We don't have to forcefully find something good about it. So we stay away from toxic positivity. We are a little mindful about our actions. We are ultimately, taking care of ourselves. So there's a thin line between self-care and selfish. So we are on the self-care side, not on the selfish side. So that's what a mentally healthy person looks like. Overall balanced life. And again, a good perception of self is very, very important. And just another note that, you won't be able to do it every time the opportunity comes. But out of 10 times, if you are like, skipping on it, if you are just, being a little irrational, maybe not being too mindful about things here and there, like let's say 2 to 3 times or so out of 10, it's okay. You are a human. You're allowed to maybe at times, get angry a little bit too much. But again, knowing that I need to apologize for it or knowing that I need to make amends for it, and I'm not like, what is it that you're doing afterwards. So if you're expressing emotions a little bit too much here and there, like a once in a blue moon thing, it's okay. You don't always have to rationalize everything. You don't always have to manage your emotion. You don't always have to be mindful. You don't always have to be like, that in a monk state. Basically, we are not at that level that monks are. So we are humans and we are allowed to mess up a little bit here and there. To err is to human. To make mistakes is to human. So, and if you're okay with making those mistakes, if you're okay with settling with the fact that I got a little angry and I did not eat for an entire day, happens like maybe once a year, it's okay. You don't have to beat yourself up for it. So just that level of understanding is important for a healthy brain. Yeah.
Great. So you listen to emotional pain of people every day. How do you protect your own mental health?
You're asking like during my working hours or like just in general, what do I do?
So in general, like you are always listening to emotional issues, emotional pain, and you are always around it. And we tend to get affected to what is happening around us, and we are surrounded by. We're very infectious kind of people, so we get infectious towards the energy also and towards sadness also and all that. So how do you, as a person who helps so many people with mental issues, actually protect your own mental health?
Okay, so first of all, we are properly trained how to not take everything personally, even if it's a relatable situation. I need to tell myself, Radhika, you're a professional at that time. You're not Radhika outside this office space. So, create
Mm-hmm.
that personal boundary. Sometimes I have to remind myself. Sometimes, okay, when I'm in a professional mode, someone is crying in front of me, someone is there sharing a sad story, something really terrible happened to that person, or they just, break down during the session for whatever reason. Now, I, as a professional, also years of experience, really helped me to be an expert at this. I know how to act at that time. I know how to humanize that person without taking it personally. I know how to sympathize, how to empathize without, crying with the person. Oh my God, sister, this happened with me as well. I don't know, it's like off the table. But at times it also happens that after a session, I usually take like a 10-15 minute break. And in that time, maybe I'm crying as well because I felt bad because it was something that triggered in me as well. And I know it's okay. I have my own coping skills for that. For example, I have a terrace garden. I usually go up there, like on like yeah, I usually go up the terrace and I just like literally lie on the grass, or I'll be like just clicking pictures of the flowers while crying maybe at times. So I mean that kind of drowns me. I just literally play a song and dance in my cabin itself. That works for me. Sometimes I just take a sheet of paper, some colors, and I will just like very agitatingly just scribble all over it with different colors, different pens, just taking it out over there. I do that. Sometimes I do like short meditation sessions. Sometimes I just put my head down and just sleep for 15 minutes, to put a timer over there and just like do that. Have some water, maybe call up a friend. I have a few kids in the house. I have my nephews, so I will just go tease them a little, play a little ball with them, things like that. So every psychologist needs to have their own regulatory methods. They need to have their own regulatory systems over there. It could be anything, but it should be something healthy and something that works for them, something which is sustainable, something which is doable on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, I mean, in general, if we talk about what I do to take care of my mental health, I journal every day. I meditate every day. I make sure I indulge with nature every day. I make sure I go to the gym every day. I have good social connections. I meet people once a month and things like that. So I'll be meeting my mother once a month. I'm meeting my friends once a month. I'll be going out with my husband on weekends, things like that. So making sure that I am socially healthy as well. So that really helps me to be on the other side of my professional self, and that is really like a stress buster for me, to be honest.
This is, I even thought that I feel sad for 2, 3 days, even if I watch a sad movie. So, it impacts me like that. And you are actually watching a real sad thing on daily basis. So I can totally, I can only say hats off. This is a very, very difficult job to, take care of them and take care of yourself, which is eventually going to affect a lot of family members of yours. So yeah, so that was my last question. I do not have any further questions, but I love talking to you.